The House will come to order. Please join Representative Froelich in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And
Thank you.
got it. Mr. Gregorio, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile,
Here.
Arndt,
Here.
Bacon, Baisley, Benavidez,
Here.
Burnett,
Here.
Bird, Bockenfeld, Bradfield, Caraveo, Carver, Catlin, Cutter, Representative Cutter, Doherty, Duran, Escar, Exum,
Morning, sir.
Froelich, Geithner, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Gray, Representative Gray. Representative Gray is excused. Hanks, Herod, Holtorf, Hooten, Representative Hooten. Representative Hooten is excused. Jackson,
Here.
Judah,
Here.
Kennedy, Kip, Larson, Lontine, Luck, Lynch, McCluskey, McCormick,
Here.
McKean, McLaughlin,
Present.
Michelson Janae,
Present.
Mullica, Representative Mullica is excused. Neville,
Here.
Ortiz, Pelton, Pico, Ransom, Rich,
Present.
Ricks,
Present.
Roberts, Sandridge, Representative Sandridge. Representative Sandridge is excused. Sirota, Snyder, Soper. Representative Soper is excused. Sullivan, Tipper, Titone,
Here.
Valdez A, Valdez D,
Good morning, Colorado.
Van Beber, Representative Van Beber, Van Winkle, Weissman, Will, Williams, Woodrow, Woog, Young, and Mr. Speaker.
With 63 present, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Bradfield. Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it is with celebration today that this will be the last time I ever make this motion in this august assembly. Mr. Speaker, I move that the Journal of Thursday, March 11th, 2021 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative Bradfield. You have done a great job this week. I hope that maybe there will be a future time that you continue to make these motions. But you have all heard the motion that the Journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Uh-oh. All those opposed say no.
No.
I will say, Representative Bradfield, that was the best no I've ever heard. That being said, the ayes clearly have it and the motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Holtorf. And hold on, Representative Holtorf. Members, we do have an announcement and introduction in the well. Let's give our attention to Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Esteemed colleagues, I am very pleased to see a proclamation that I would like to read that is very impactful and meaningful to me as a rural Colorado legislator. If you'd beg my indulgence, I would read this proclamation. Whereas farmers and ranchers raise livestock to produce nutritious, affordable protein for families across the state and throughout the nation, and animal proteins supply the body with essential nutrients, including sources of zinc, vitamin B12 and D, and fatty acids. And whereas livestock graze lands that are not suitable for the production of crops and are able to convert solar energy into plants and from there into protein-dense meat products. And whereas agriculture producers take seriously the responsibility of protecting the land, water, and air, and we demonstrate this commitment through compliance with state and federal regulations. And whereas livestock producers are devoted to the animals in their care and have an obligation to provide responsible animal care using sound animal husbandry practices based on practical experience and scientific research. And whereas agriculture serves as our state's economic backbone, generating more than $40 billion in economic activity annually, and supporting more than 170,000 jobs, livestock production contributes over $4.6 billion to the Colorado's economy. Whereas the livestock industry is an essential part of Colorado's past, present, and future, and is the cornerstone of the foundation of our state. Therefore, I, Jared Polis, Governor of the State of Colorado, do hereby proclaim March 22nd, 2021 as Colorado Livestock Proud Day, given under my hand and the Executive Seal of the State of Colorado this 22nd day of March 2021. Signed, Jared Polis. I think this is a first step to stop the attack on rural Colorado, and I'm very pleased, and I hope this will point us in the right direction to begin that journey to reconcile the differences and close the rural-urban divide. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Holtorf. Further announcements and introductions. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I was asked to make this announcement, and I'll make it again on Monday, but just wanted to give you a heads up. One of our usual favorite days of the year is Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day. And of course, this year it's going to be virtual, but you can still enjoy a box lunch delivered to the Capitol to listen to speakers from the comfort of your office on March 25th from 12:30 to 1. The reason I'm making this announcement today is to remind you to check your email for an invite from Alliance Colorado that was sent out on March 10th to RSVP to make sure they have a box lunch for you available. You have to RSVP by March 18th, so check your inbox for that invitation.
Great. Any further announcements or introductions? Representative Michelson-Jeannet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, members of the Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services Committee, we will not be meeting upon adjournment. I will see you all on Tuesday for the pickup of our regularly scheduled programming.
Thank you for that announcement. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just wanted you all to know we're keeping an eye on the weather, and not just in Denver. We're keeping an eye on the weather across the state to really make sure that we get our work done today on the floor, get you all out of here to be able to reach your destinations in a safe way. I also want to give you a heads up that the storm looks as if it's going to be the most hitting on the weekend. And instead of waiting until Monday morning to make the decision if we're coming together Monday or not, I'm hoping to make that decision on Sunday, and I will make sure to get the word out to you all to know if there will be a snow day Monday or not. If you are nervous about traveling in Monday, if we do come, I would ask that you fill out the request form now to participate remotely on Monday. I'd rather you stay home and be safe, participate remotely, if for some chance we don't call that snow day. But I just wanted to put that out there for everyone to kind of give you a perspective of where we're sitting. But we're watching the weather hour by hour here right now this morning, and we will continue to watch it over the weekend and let you know sooner than later if Monday will be a snow day or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. The next order of business is third reading of bills. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over the third reading calendar to Monday, March 15th.
Next order of business is general orders. Madam, well, let's, before we move on with that, let's do reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 211164 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1055 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Energy and Environment, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1145 be amended as follows and be so amended, be referred to the Committee on Finance with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1162 be amended as follows and be so amended, be referred to the Committee on Finance with favorable recommendation. Committee on Business Affairs and Labor, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1007 be amended as follows and be so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1026 be postponed indefinitely. Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1069 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriation. House Bill 1071 be amended as follows and be so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1109 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on State, Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1074 be postponed indefinitely. House Bill 1011 be amended as follows and be so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation.
Printing report.
The Chief Clerk
Printing
report.
report will be printed in the journal. All right. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the following bills be made special orders on Friday, March 12th at 9:15 a.m. House Bill 1076, House Bill 1097, House Bill 1164, House Bill 1123, and House Bill 1130.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders on Friday, March 12th at 9:15 a.m. Representative Caraveo.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders.
You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Caraveo will take the chair.
Will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length.
Committee reports are printed in and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to HB 1076.
House Bill 21-1076 by Representatives McCluskey and Will, also Senator Donovan, concerning carpooling service internet applications and in connection therewith requiring that application owners or operators register with the Department of Transportation.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to serve with you.
And it is a true honor to serve with you, ma'am.
I move House Bill 1076 on second reading and the committee report from Transportation and Local Government.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In committee, we did make several amendments to fine-tune this legislation to specifically call out that we were limiting the number of carpool trips to 1 per day for each driver. We defined the carpooling service, the length of the trips, as well as excluding any trips to and from our ski areas. And we made sure that all trips, while usually posted a day in advance, would never be posted less than 2 hours in advance. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is discussion of the Transportation and Local Government report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Aye. The ayes have it. The Transportation and Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I celebrate today the feet of snow that is in our forecast. This is what makes Colorado something special. Our ski resorts are excited to welcome so many tourists and Coloradans to the slopes. Yes, Representative Woodrow, it is a part of who we are as a state. I am proud to say that I represent 10 different ski areas, and the importance of skiing and our outdoor recreation economies to this state cannot be understated. But we have a challenge, and House Bill 1076 addresses that challenge. I-70 is a critical transportation corridor connecting Colorado's Front Range and the Western Slope. It is the major thoroughfare from east to west to move tourists, residents, goods, and services. But many of you, like me, have spent time on that highway, hours on that highway, and we all know that traffic is becoming a significant challenge and issue. It's challenging the ability for all of us to get up and enjoy that pure white gold. House Bill 1076 brings into fruition carpool internet applications as one of the many solutions that we are raising up to try and reduce congestion on not only I-70 but in other highways in the state. This bill allows us to stand up carpooling applications through CDOT, through registration with CDOT, making sure that passengers understand these carpooling services are not TNCs, transportation network companies, that these are truly just good people trying to come together, reduce the number of vehicles on the corridor and elsewhere. And we are excited that we had so much support and love from our folks in the Transportation and Local Government Committee. With that, I urge an aye vote.
Further discussion on HB 1076, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a really great bill, and I'll tell you why. We're going to be talking a lot more about transportation as we go through this session, but we don't have the ability, and we're never going to have the money, even if we do come up with some more money, whether we do or the federal government does, in order to solve all of the problems we have by just laying more pavement or laying more concrete. There's a number you could come up with. It's billions, and we're not going to get the number of billions we need. So what we need to do is we need to go out and get those billions, and we need to make the investments in the infrastructure that are as smart as possible. We also need to use our roads and our transportation infrastructure more smartly than we are right now. We need intelligence about how we use it. We need to adapt into how we use it. And this bill is a fantastic example of exactly how to do that. This is giving people the opportunity who otherwise might have been in 4 cars on I-70 to be in 1 car on I-70 through technology. And I don't know how many of you here use I-70. I think it's probably everybody. But treating, and this is not just an I-70 bill, it applies across the state, but that's where the grassroots stakeholding has come from. Taking 4 cars and turning them into 1 on our most congested thoroughfares, especially for long distance trips like I-70, is one of the ways that we can offset the need to spend additional billions of dollars that we don't have. So I was a proud supporter of this bill in committee. I'm a proud supporter of this bill now. And I appreciate the people who are thinking creatively about using our transportation infrastructure smarter, not just having to expand it and using it in the same way we have for a long time. So please vote yes.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank my co-prime in this bill for doing such a great job there. And the I-70 is critical to the West Slope. And anything we can do to reduce traffic in I-70 is helpful. I think we understand we can't build our way out of this situation of the traffic congestion. We have to innovate our way out. And House Bill 1076 helps do that. So I'm proud to be on the bill and support it 100%. Good bill.
Further discussion on 1076. Representative Van Winkle.
Hey, Madam Chair, and members, I've actually voted no in committee, and here's my reason why. I'll tell you. The PUC, the reason we're here is because the PUC issued a cease and desist order against these carpooling companies, and in the cease and desist order, improperly classified them. And so that's the problem we have. And so that problem mixed with the I-70 problem, which is, of course, a major issue for the Colorado people. I understand those things, but I don't quite understand how the solution is a new regulatory scheme put onto carpoolers. I think carpoolers are perfectly capable of doing what they do without the need for a new regulatory scheme. And finally, why it's housed in CDOT, that just boggles my mind, because CDOT, our Department of Transportation, should really be focused on fixing roads and bridges and I-70, not bothering hardworking taxpayers with a new regulatory scheme that regulates how many times a day they can get in their cars and drive, how much they can charge, what fees they can charge, what they have to, this paragraph here that they have to tell people. So for those reasons, I'm just a no on it. I completely understand that I-70 is an issue, but the I-70 issue and this as a solution, there's a big gap there. This is not the solution to I-70, and what this is a brand new headache for the people of Colorado who are just trying to carpool around, and they don't need a brand new regulatory scheme. And if the PUC really did improperly misclassify carpoolers of Colorado, which I believe they did, then that's the problem, not a new regulatory scheme that increases the size and scope of government. So for that reason, I was a no in committee and will be a no today.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, sir.
Yep, I remember when we said at the training, first day. Members, I'm here today to talk about transportation in general. This bill is a good idea. We'll talk about regulations, we'll talk about who gets to play, who gets to stay. But are we talking about how we get from western Colorado to Denver, to cattle markets, to sheep feedlots, to bring your sweet corn to your grocery store so that you can buy Olathe sweet corn? By the way, buy all of that you can. I raise it. The point I'm trying to make is there are 2 major highways that traverse the Rocky Mountains. One is I-70, the other one is Highway 50. Highway 50 connects the western slope up over Monarch Pass onto the eastern slope. My communities are now facing Highway 50 being closed 19 hours a day. And it's the major thoroughfare for the southwest part of the state of Colorado to get to Market, to get to Denver, or to get to the eastern slope. The way this ties together with I-70 is that all of the traffic off of Highway 50 will be diverted to I-70. And I-70 is already too full. We've heard that testimony this morning. I really hope that a lot of people do some ride sharing, because I think there's something like 5,000 automobiles and semi-trucks that transverse Highway 50 every day. I'm not just down here crying about it. There are those of us in Montrose that are trying very hard to open that highway to a minimum of at least 3 hours more a day. Because one of the things you need to be aware of is cattle cannot stand in a semi-truck for hours and hours and hours. This highway will be open from 6:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning, from 12:30 at noon to 1:30 in the afternoon, and from 5 in the afternoon till 7 at night. Hard to make a living when you can't get there. Plus, that highway is the major thoroughfare for the communities to the east of us to get to our hospital, because it's the largest hospital in our area. Thank you for the indulgence, for allowing me to speak about the problems on the Western Slope in regards to transportation. This idea, I hope, works. I really do hope it works to create more space on I-70, because today should remind you why 2 highways ought to be open. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on 1076, Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of you don't know that my mother's ran a transportation company for 40 years. Most of you don't know that in college I worked for that transportation company, and when my mother was in the hospital, I ran the transportation company as the interim general manager, providing transportation across the state of Colorado and western Nebraska. I'm excited to see this bill. I'm excited that we're promoting carpooling for many reasons. Because there's not enough infrastructure in this state to move Colorado. It's challenged now, but in the next 10 or 20 years, where will we be? And what will those challenges be? I hope that this legislation, I'm going to ask the bill sponsor if it covers the entire state, if it coordinates transportation and carpooling across the state, to include the Western Slope and Highway 50 that my esteemed colleague mentioned. Because transportation is everything to support commerce, to support social interaction in our communities, to support small business, large business, commerce, to feed our communities, the wellness of our communities with hospital transportation, medical transportation. There's so many things that are critical to transportation. And this bill, as far as I see, promotes us getting together, using the internet applications or future internet applications that allow us to get to the places we need to go. Now, I've loved skiing since I was a boy, and in my day I thought I was a pretty good skier. A black double diamond would scare me a little bit, but I'd still bound down it and tear it up if it didn't tear me up. But I will tell you, this is a good idea. This is not only a West Slope solution. It also applies to the East Slope. And so I'd like just to have the bill sponsor answer that question for me. And I believe I'll be strongly in support of this particular bill.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, to my colleague, this is for statewide use. The carpooling apps can be functional anywhere. We have put guidance into the bill around the length of the trips, but those trips can occur throughout the state. I also just want to say quickly, Rep. Catlin, I feel your pain. Yes, transportation is a challenge. This is one of many tools that I hope makes driving in the state more efficient and easier on all of us. And, this was important to stand up in this way so that consumers don't get confused about what the TNCs are doing and what a carpooling app does. I urge an aye vote.
Further discussion on House Bill 1076. Seeing none, the question before us is passage of House Bill 1076. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. House Bill 1076 passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1097.
House Bill 21-1097 by Representatives Young and Pelton, also Senator Fields, concerning recommendations from the Colorado Behavioral Health Task Force and in connection therewith establishing a behavioral health administration.
Representative Young.
Madam Chair, it is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
I move House Bill 1097 and the Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had 6 amendments in committee. One of them was to change the legislative declaration to more clarify, to be more clarifying than the original version was. Another amendment was to just clean up technical wording and phrasing and clarifying.
Any further discussion on the committee report? Representative Young.
Other amendments clarified the roles and responsibilities of healthcare policy and finance as they are aligning and integrating with the Behavioral Health Administration. Another amendment addressed the governance structure to make sure it will oversee policy for children and youth. It also adds entities to the groups that will be consulted as part of planning, and this includes tribal entities, and they are added throughout the rest of the bill to make sure their needs and interests are considered throughout the bill. And finally, the Behavioral Health Administration will promote a system that supports a whole person approach outside the Behavioral Health Administration to address social determinants of health and help people contact outside agency for basic needs around housing and food and transportation.
Further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of the Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Young.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm so excited to be introducing House Bill 2197 with Representative Pelton based on the recommendations of the Behavioral Health Task Force. First of all, I want to say that I could speak for a very long time about this very important bill, but as a school psychologist, I'm going to recognize the perhaps anxiety in the members of the House about making sure we end in a timely way to get home safely, so I will shorten my discussion. As we've discussed frequently on the floor already this year, behavioral health needs in this state are out the roof. We know that we are impacted by suicides. Over 1 million people in the state are waiting for behavioral health treatment and intervention, and we are rated 47th out of 50 for access to care in our state across the nation. So the governor, recognizing the fact that we are spending $1.4 billion for behavioral health, and we still had extreme barriers for people accessing care, initiated the Behavioral Health Task Force in 2019, and this continued throughout the pandemic. And I was fortunate to participate in many of the committee work, and this was really worked on most honestly and diligently by all the people involved to come up with a solution. And they have a whole blueprint that they have brought forward, and it addresses many of the needs of not being able to access care because you don't have the right funding, or as in many communities, there is not a continuum of care, even to begin with in your own community. So this is the first of many steps that the Behavioral Health Administration be put in place and to address these significant needs.
Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for those of you that sat on the Public Health and Human Service Committee's last term, the last 2 years, you can remember Representative Singer saying many times, how many different programs do we have around behavioral health? Where all are they administrated? Where's all the money? So this is a bill to start that process. As a county commissioner, I could see the fragmented system we had out there, and sometimes it's just almost impossible to find the resources for the people that really needed the help. What this bill will do when this Behavioral Health Administration is set up, it will add efficiency in that all the different programs will be housed under one roof, and then the employees and monies and everything will be a transfer. It's not government growth, it's just a transfer, adding efficiency and accountability to government. And anytime we can do that, I'm going to be on board with that. So I'd ask for a yes vote.
Representative Young.
One important piece of information that Representative Pelton referenced is the fact that currently we have at least 10 state agencies administering these over 75 programs, which the Behavioral Health Administration will result in a definite streamlining. I encourage an aye vote.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the question before us is passage of House Bill 1097. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1097 passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1164.
House Bill 1164 by Representatives Escar and Garnett, also Senators Zenzinger and Fenberg, concerning reductions in the property tax credits that apply to school districts' total program mill levies for purposes of funding the Public School Finance Act of 1994.
Good luck figuring out that sweet spot for the podium, you two. Who would like to go first?
It's fine.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1164.
To the bill. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members. It's great to see you down here on second reading. I'm really excited to be presenting House Bill 1164 to all of you. You know, we all know that our school finance system here in Colorado is broken. And it's broken for many, many different reasons. And in this chamber, probably before most of your time, now Senator Lundin and I created a process to really dive deep into analyzing our school finance formula. And we set up the interim committee to do just that. And many of you have served on that committee, and we hired consultants to help us understand why our formula is as broken as it is. And the one part of it that's sort of outside the formula is the local share piece on local mill levies that we're trying to fix today. And the consultants said, we have worked with legislators in dozens of states to help fix their school finance formulas, and we've never seen a system that is more broken than the local share mill levy portion of the school finance, Colorado school finance formula. And in all of the discussions around the formula itself, a former member, JBC member, chair of the Education Committee, Millie Hamner, said, you will never solve school finance without taking a look at and trying to solve the local share, state share, mill levy piece first. And that's what is before you today. A well thought out, stakeholdered, hours of discussions on how Colorado can responsibly move forward on solving a big part of our dysfunctional school finance system. Is it easy? No. When you fix big problems in this state, rarely are they easy. This is all based on a decision that CDE made long before any of our time in this building that was against the will of the voters in nearly 170 of our 178 school districts, and set us on a path to increasing the state share to backfill the bad decision made by CDE and take away dollars that should be in the classroom to help our kiddos every single day. And so, is the solution easy? No. Is the solution fair? I think so. And I'm happy to debate that today. But what we're essentially saying is we want to have CDE create a process to fix the problem that they created, but to put guardrails on it so that as they slowly start to unwind the tax credits that we put in place through the School Finance Act of last year, that we're not putting too big of a hardship on the people in those communities, but that we set ourselves up on a path of 20 years to finally fix this problem that has plagued our state for nearly 25 years. We are going to remember this moment. Our kids are going to remember this moment. Generations of students that are going to come that aren't even born yet are going to remember this moment. And hopefully, we can come together in a responsible way to say, this is hard, there are no easy answers, but this is responsible. And CDE, let's create a plan to move forward that is structured and responsible. So with that, I hope to earn your support. I'll turn it over to my colleague that has really led this charge and who it's been an honor to do this with, Majority Leader Escar.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Speaker. I don't think it's quite fair to say I've led this charge. Like you mentioned, this conversation has been happening long before I think either one of us got to have the honor to serve here. I remember when I first heard about it, I honestly didn't even understand fully what a mill levy was and what it meant. Bob Rankin, Senator Bob Rankin, pulled me into his office one day and said, Esgar, you need to understand this and you need to see how this impacts your district. My district is one of those that is sitting at 27 mills and does not pass mill levy overrides. We are a struggling district because of the inequitable system that we have unintentionally created in this state. And CDE was a part of that. When they did not listen to the will of the voters, they created this program, a patchwork, that doesn't make sense, that has no rhyme or reason when it comes to mill levies. What this bill is simply asking them to do is correct that mistake. And it's not going to be an overnight correction. This is something that we are implementing over 20 years to make sure that it's implemented in a way that won't be unnecessarily impactful to districts or to communities. That's what this bill is. There's so many intelligent folks that have come together for years around the table, school districts, nonpartisan staff members, fiscal analysts, members of this body from across the state to figure out how do we fix this system. And I think both sponsors of this bill will be the first to say this doesn't fix it. This definitely starts us on the path forward. I'm not proud that Colorado is ranked almost dead last in funding for education. It's a system we have in Colorado that has held us back from being able to fully fund education the way that I think all of us would like to be able to do. Again, this is a step forward. We ask for your support. We welcome the conversation and the debate, but know that this bill has been a long time coming, and I am so incredibly proud that we have made it this far.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so with that, based on conversations we had in the Education Committee, I ask that we move L003 and have it displayed.
The amendment has been properly moved and is displayed before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is really based on great conversations that we had with Representative Larson in the Education Committee. But in the first year of implementing this plan through CDE to slowly remove the credits that we as a body put in place through the School Finance Act last year, we're going to save from state share backfill $91 million. In the second year, we'll save $145 million. And we just want to make sure through this amendment, through this conversation, that those dollars stay in going towards education and to the school districts and to the classrooms to help our kiddos. So I would urge an aye vote on L003.
Further discussion on L003? Seeing none, the question before us is passage or adoption of L003. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. Back to the bill. Further discussion on House Bill 1164. Representative Bockenfeld.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, sir.
Colorado finances, and particularly education finance, is a pretty complicated issue, so I may be schooled up here. But I'm trying to wrap my head around this. It's the intertwining of Tabor and mill levies and assessed valuations that's creating a scenario which I believe probably has an impact more on rural districts than it does urbanized districts. Okay? And I'd be very interested in getting more information from that. But here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that because the assessment ratio's going down, that some of these rural districts have a declining revenue for their schools, and they have to lower their mill levy, and they can't raise it without a vote of the people because of Tabor. And the state's backfilling those school districts, what I think is a great idea. I'm not big into subsidies, but let me tell you why the assessment rate's going down. Because the economic revenue engine of the state of Colorado is the urbanized areas. And we are lowering, because their assessed valuations, the values of their homes are going up, it's causing the assessment rate to go down. And so there's a huge economic benefit with Tabor in your urbanized areas. And in order to keep things equal, the state backfills the rural areas that don't have those appreciated values. And by backfilling that, there's a subsidy. And I guess what's wrong with that? I think as a homeowner in an urbanized area, I've had substantial equity built in the value of my property because of the economic engine, which I believe, and many of my conservative colleagues believe, is a result of Tabor. I don't have an issue in backfilling a little bit of that back to the rural schools at the state level to keep them whole. We're all in this together. So what I see happening here is now you're creating a program that's going to give rural areas the ability to raise their mill levy on their local rural constituents who have not received the same economic benefit that I received. And that is a fairness issue. It's unfair that I have the economic benefit and force
a rural, urban person who owns a property to now raise their taxes because I don't want to backfill it at the state level. So I look forward, Mr. Speaker and Madam Majority Leader, if you will educate me as to where I'm wrong. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Bockenfeld. This is an important discussion. This idea that's before you today came from the Rural School Alliance. The Rural School Alliance, the idea that's before you today is coming from our rural school districts. But it's important that we remember how we got here. So let me just take a second before we get to the fairness issue. So it's not really, in my opinion, it's not a question of whether or not this highlights the rural-urban divide. What it is a fairness issue where two rural districts with the same valuation, one's paying $65 in property taxes and one's paying $650 in property taxes. That's what we're trying to solve. This isn't pitting again the rural schools versus the urban schools. This is trying to fix the inequities that exist between districts that are neighboring each other, but because of this distorted place that we find ourselves, one taxpayer is being gouged, the other is not, and the state's backfilling those dollars with the taxpayers' dollars from the districts that's being gouged, when that taxpayer should be getting the dollars from the state share into their district, because why should that taxpayer be having to pay $600 and backfilling the other district just because of this broken system that we find ourselves? So we all know Tabor imposed a cap on tax revenue that would not allow a school district's revenues to grow faster than the rate of inflation plus enrollment growth, right? Between 1994 and 2002, voters in 174 of the 178 school districts de-Bruced. Now, none of us are going to be as famous as Doug Bruce, and I wish there was an action or a verb that people and taxpayers could take that was de-Garnett or whatever, but we're not going to be there. But we all know what de-Bruce means, right? De-Garnett, I'm not sure what that would be. But, trying to find my place now. The average mill levy before all of this happened was 38, okay? Then CDE makes this conclusion, makes this error that even though these districts de-Bruced, as the formula was starting to go out of whack and districts were going over the Tabor cap, they were forcing mill levies down to a place to create these inequities. It got so bad that this body in 2007 had to pass legislation to freeze the mill levies in these de-Garnetted districts from going down anymore. The system was so broken that we had to take action to stop the bottom from falling out because of the decision that the de-Brucing in between 1994 and 2002 for some reason didn't count. We're going to go against the will of the voters, and we had to freeze it because it was getting too bad, and the backfill from the state was becoming unsustainable. And so we're in this frozen place from 2007 until we find ourselves here today debating this. And there is a question of whether or not this is allowed under Tabor, but this is the appropriate place for this body to find itself, just so everyone knows, to protect school districts. We think the best way forward is to pass this bill, but to pass an accompanying joint resolution by this body to send an interrogatory to the Supreme Court to make sure that what we're doing is constitutional. That's why this is hard. That's why nobody has ever done this before. But we're going to do this the right way. We're going to pass this, which is a reasonable, puts guardrails on CDE to start to put a 20-year path to fix this problem that they created in the early 2000s and that we froze in 2007. And it is going to very slowly increase mills in local districts that we as a body put credits in place in the School Finance Act last year. So that is going to happen. But that's not, to Representative Bockenfeld's point, to solve the rural economic divide. That's to create taxpayer fairness between those two neighboring districts, one paying $600, one paying, whatever I said before, $59, $60, and to make sure that we slowly get them to parity so that the state backfill, which is everyone's tax dollars, aren't just going inequitably to the $60 district to backfill their total program, and is equitably being shared with the two neighboring districts, so the taxpayers in the district paying $600 are still getting the benefit of their state taxes that are supposed to go to their students in their district. I don't like talking about Tabor any more than anyone does in this body, but we're doing this the right way. This is a responsible approach, followed by a joint resolution, send the question to the Supreme Court, get an answer back to inform us on the best way of moving forward. And if the answer is yes, which I think it will be, this is a reasonable way of solving taxpayer inequities that have lasted for too long. And I also want to give a shout out, and I know he's listening, to Craig Harper over on the JBC staff who elevated this issue to this body years ago. And when I first came into the body, I said, we're never going to solve that problem, Craig. But Craig, to you, thank you for your service. This is the first step.
Representative Bockenfeld.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me kind of work through this. Again, I may be schooled, but here's what happened. At the time Tabor was implemented, and the reason there's an inequity in some of these districts is because one or two things happened. The folks in the district who have children in those schools decided to raise their mill levies so that they wouldn't have a reduction in, raised their mill levies so they wouldn't have a reduction in revenue, or what they did was they debruced. And why did they debruce the school districts when Tabor was implemented? It was a risk management tool for those schools and the people that lived in those districts, because they weren't quite sure how the state was going to treat their school district going forward if they had a reduction in revenue and left Tabor in place. Risk management decisions are made every day in corporate America. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. The folks in those counties made a decision to go around the will of the people of the state of Colorado and debruce their school district, because they didn't want to take the risk of having reduced revenues. So by debrucing, what had happened is that their cost for their school went up, and the ones who did not debruce got backfilled. I'm sorry they made that decision, but that's what happened. It's gambling, folks. And the people who took the risk, they're losing now because they're paying more and they're not being backfilled. So it's not a fairness issue. I still, and Mr. Speaker and Madam Majority Leader, please educate me if I'm wrong. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on 1164? Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I rise in opposition to 1164. And I just had a couple of thoughts. I appreciate the amendment that was put on, because that was part of the issue that I had, although I don't think that that amendment necessarily solves the entirety of the issue that I have. So I still have concerns about the prioritization of those dollars. But I think it's important to kind of bring to the body some of the questions that I'm getting out of my district. And I think the biggest one, setting aside the prioritization, has to do with this question. And you've just heard it, and I think many of us have already heard some of this conversation before. and that is to go to the Supreme Court interrogatory, see what their say on it is. But when you look at Colorado, when you look at the United States, there tends to be a level of distrust when it comes to our elected officials. I don't think that's shocking to anybody in this body, but it is the reality in which we live. And so recognizing that reality where we are not looked upon with the most trust by the public, I think it would be appropriate to bring to this body's attention the questions that I'm getting. And some of those questions are, well, hey, out of House District 19, Representative Geithner, why are they just going to the Supreme Court? Why didn't they put the question to us, the voter? Why didn't they let us address this? If there was indeed an error, why didn't they let us, the voter, address this issue? I don't have an answer for them. But I think that that's what people are struggling with, because they look at Tabor and they understand Tabor. We debated a lot of this through 1418 from last year, which I was opposed to as well. And that was a question that was similarly asked by the residents in my district then. And I don't really know what to tell them. I have some thoughts maybe, but I think that that's a valid concern. A lot of folks look to Tabor, they understand Tabor and what Tabor provides for them. And I have no problem talking about Tabor. I've read Tabor. I can talk about it at length. So I think if we're trying to get to a point where we're trying to make sure that there is that equity of funding across the districts and one district isn't necessarily supporting another district and all of this, then it seems to me the logical way to do that, the fairest way to do that with the most transparency and the most level of comfort is to go to the public and ask them, and also honoring the spirit of Tabor, if you don't want to say it's the letter of Tabor. And so that's why I will be opposing this, because I do believe, regardless of what the Supreme Court will say, and it's on interrogatory or what have you, I do believe that this stands as an affront to Tabor and what the people of Colorado decided on. I'm not proud either that Colorado is struggling to fund education behind the other states. However, if there was an error, whoever perpetrated the error, then maybe we can get an answer so that I can tell my district, why are we appearing to kind of sidestep Tabor? Why is there this question of Tabor? Why is there this doubt? So that's my question that I have for the sponsors. Why was this brought through this way to correct this error? Why wasn't it brought to the people? And I bring that question to the sponsors on behalf of the people that are asking me that question.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Representative Geithner. The premise of the action taken in this bill to phase out mill levy credits is resetting the mill levies. It does not require a public vote because those public votes already happened in the majority of school districts. And the mill levies in question never should have been reduced in the first place by CDE. However, because of the potential legal exposure for school districts, we believe that it's wise to submit an interrogatory to the Supreme Court to affirm the constitutional viability of the mill levy correction. In 2009, this Colorado Supreme Court held that mill levy freeze was constitutional and further found that mill levy reductions were erroneous, not an attorney, erroneous in its ruling in the Mesa Board of County Commissioners versus the state. And as those mills declined, the state was on the hook for the growing share of K-12 costs, with most of the backfill going to the wealthiest, fastest growing districts. And once mills went down, as we know, because of Tabor, they could never go back up due to that requirement for voter approval of increases. So this has been through the process. The voters, when they voted to de-Bruce, they did have that spot and they had that voice. But I think my colleague had more to share on that.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, Madam Majority Leader, not a great deal more to add. I think that's it. To Rep. Geithner's point, the premise of Tabor is that the voter gets to make the big decisions. And as we've heard from the speaker a few minutes ago, in 174 of the 178 districts all over the state, the voters made the big decisions. A little bit more history here. It's actually set forth in Mesa. It's one of these interesting cases that also does a good job providing some history. The state began providing support, subsidy, if you will, an appropriate subsidy, I think, to local districts in 1935. We called it different things. Apparently, we didn't start calling it the School Finance Act until 1952. Prior to Tabor, the last big School Finance Act in '88 had a uniform total program levy of 40. That was what all school districts were directed to assess, and different amounts popped out of that as a result of different extent of property valuation. Then Tabor kicks in '92, and it sets forth the local district limit as we've heard about. I think that's Section 8. And then the ratchet so-called starts kicking in. Voters across the state, and all this is compiled. I mean, it's in this binder somewhere. I've got a spreadsheet. I could share it with anybody who wants. It's public information. Voters in local districts, large and small, rural and urban, started making those choices. We want to go above that Tabor revenue limit. We want to exercise the prerogative that is afforded to us by Tabor itself and retain that revenue and invest it into our local schools and not be exposed to the default ratchet behavior of Tabor. I can hardly think of another example where in any level of government the decision to debruce has been that nearly universal. 174 of 178 districts, and there's 175th that sort of did half of a debruce, but we don't usually talk about that. It is, the more I think about this, and I was reviewing this last night, it is truly extraordinary that basically an administrative decision, not even a legislative decision, an administrative decision that persisted over years basically thwarted the impact of these decisions made by voters in districts all over the state to the detriment of those districts and their teachers and their students. Now, I think what we just did with the amendment up here a few minutes ago was actually exactly the right thing to do. Imagine if this had not been happening, then holding everything else constant, holding the economy constant, the local share of total program, consistent with those voter approvals in elections, would have been greater. And then, the state share could have been constant. And maybe now we wouldn't be consistently in the bottom 10 of all the 50 states in per capita investment in any ranking you look at. We're 39, 40, 42. Frankly, this is part of why. Because this administrative decision, before any of us got here, operated to override the decisions of local electorates for the benefit of their schools and kids. And we're still cleaning that up now. As we heard, part one was SB 199 in 2007, and here we are that much later. Yeah, I mean, there may be a lingering question. I think an interrogatory is a good belt and suspenders approach. But I think the key point, to our colleague from El Paso County, yeah, Tabor puts the voter in charge. And voters in 174 of 178 different districts already said that we want to exercise the prerogative vested in us and exceed the Tabor calculated limit and put that money, holding the levy constant, into our school districts because we believe in investing in local education. To the last points about sort of equity, we have all of these factors in the School Finance Act. We do the count, and we look at high-cost districts, and we look at special needs districts. It is a simple reality that different districts around the state have different economic bases, property tax bases. There are parts of the state where you could levy 500, 1,000 mills. You still wouldn't get there because of the nature of those districts. So because we are all in this together, because of the constitutional requirement of a thorough and uniform education provided to our kids, we do move dollars around, we do subsidize. And that's appropriate, and that's going to keep happening consistently with the School Finance Act, above and beyond what we do here. And that will continue to be a prerogative for the General Assembly. So anyway, the point here is that the voters have already spoken, and by what we do today, we undo something that should never happened in the first place. This is to restore the decision that voters made long ago in nearly 100% of school districts. Hope that helps.
Rep. Larson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the bill sponsors. So this bill is complicated, and I do want to start off by thanking the bill sponsors for taking on an extraordinarily complicated issue. School finance is very difficult, and it is indeed an issue that has far exceeded our time in this chamber and probably most of our predecessors' time in this chamber, as well as, Holtorf, can you, Richard, I can't hear. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, very well. My apologies. But members, I just want to kind of explain the mechanism that we have here. So essentially, what we've got is the underlying premise of this bill is because of what the bill sponsors and indeed many other folks, not necessarily myself included, but many people viewed as an error in CDE's total mill levy calculations. What we've essentially said as the state is that, or in this bill, is that these mill levies should have been this number. We have reverted those mill levies to this number, and then we have, as a state, provided tax credits to fill the delta between what you were currently paying last year and what the mill levy would have been if this decision had never actually happened. So right now we have tax credits that the state is giving out, and in the first year it's looking like $90 million. It's a substantial amount of money we're talking about. And then what this bill proposes to do, and I, while I don't necessarily like the bill in totality, I do appreciate in a very gradual way over 20 years, 1 mil per year to stop those tax credits going to those districts until they get to 27. So, and I do appreciate the graduality because, having a hard break would be, I think, really shocking to a lot of folks. But my concern with this is that what we're talking about is essentially what has been tax policy since 2002. And indeed, we'll see what the interrogatory from the Supreme Court comes back and says. But if the interrogatory does say, you know what, you're right, CD was wrong to continue to ratchet down these mill levies, what that effectively says is that, the mill rates that you've been paying for the last 18 years as a citizen, we're effectively saying you need to go gradually increase those mill rates. And in this state, we do have Tabor, and we are very used to, frankly, I can't remember the last, 2-year election cycle in Jefferson County where we didn't have something related to a property tax increase on the ballot, whether it was a mill levy override, state level or county level issue, or MD level, metropolitan district level issue. We're very used to voting on increases in our property tax. And while this may be correct in the letter of the law, if the interrogatory comes back, what it functionally will feel like to taxpayers on the ground is that their property taxes are increasing from what they had been paying. The dollars coming out of their pocket are going to be more, and they will not have gotten a vote on that. And I just feel like in this state, we've had that expectation, and especially because this is correcting an error that took place so long ago. We're talking about almost 2 decades. If this was something that had come up very recently, I think there might be a little more argument to it, but because of the length of time, and indeed because of how much our state has grown, how many people have moved here in the last 2 decades, folks that came in maybe had no idea that their school district had taken a debrucing vote and have lived here for 15 years, and now next year they're suddenly going to be like, well, why did my mill levy go up by a point? I don't understand that. I just don't know that this is necessarily the right way to go about it. And again, this is a difficult issue, and I understand. I do honestly admire that you're staking a claim, because again, I'm sure there's been similar things as I'm not sure this is the right way to go about it. That's probably been said in this well many times over the last 20 years. I do definitely appreciate the amendment that ensures that this would go to the budget stabilization factor. I would like to see it even more specifically directed to other things, but I am very appreciative of the sponsors for ensuring that these dollars will be locked into specific educational purposes, because that was something that came up in committee. Very glad that was incorporated, and I do thank you very much for that. The other concern that I have is that because of this mechanism, we're talking about 174 counties out of the 178, or not counties, my apologies, 174 school districts out of the 178 school districts in the state this would apply to. That does leave out the 4 school districts that did not have a DeBruce vote within that window. Those 4 school districts are Cherry Creek, Steamboat, Harrison, and then D11, I believe, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. I do know for a fact it's Cherry Creek, Steamboat, and Harrison, but I believe D11 is the 4th one. And those are some pretty glaring omissions, frankly. 2 of those districts are very wealthy, fairly large, and to not have them included, and I understand it's not as though the bill sponsors set out to exclude them, it's just because of the particular issues with this interrogatory and this legal question. But I would have liked to have seen a mill levy equalization bill that applied to all 178 rather than just 174. So while I do appreciate the desire to take proactive action, and I do want to see an interrogatory sent to the Supreme Court, because I do think it's important that we settle this question as to whether or not we can do this legally. I just don't think that this is necessarily the correct way to go about it. I think that while, again, it may button up the legal requirements, I think that on the ground, a lot of our constituents are simply going to be sitting there and wondering why their mill levy is gradually increasing when they didn't take a vote or they haven't taken a vote on it in the last 2 decades. So for those reasons, I am opposed to the bill, but I do sincerely appreciate all of the hard work that the sponsors have put in and their willingness to make changes to points that were brought up.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, when we talk about the mill levies increasing for some of these areas, of the 178 school districts, 127 were affected by this error. For the 51 districts that are not affected, it's either because A, they're already at 27 mills. They've been paying their unfair share for decades. B, they can fully fund their total program with local property tax revenue. Or C, they're either not yet debruced, that's Harrison and Steamboat Springs, or they only recently debruced, so their mills stay constant, Cherry Creek and Colorado Springs D11. They debruced in 2020. To me, that is exactly why the reasons they're not included in this bill is because of Tabor. That's why they're not in this bill. It's not that we decided that we should write them out of it. They shouldn't be doing what the rest of us are doing. It's because of how Tabor works. That's why they're not in this bill. And I just want to be sure that people understand that when this passes, this is not an overnight increase in people's property taxes. Again, this is 20 years. We're giving folks 20 years. The average amount of correction to actually be made across the state is 4 mills. 4 mills. And 1 mill equates to around $7 per year per $100,000 of home value. And I know every dollar counts in everybody's everyday budget, but I just want to make sure we put this into perspective. Per year, what the 1 mill maximum increase that a local area could incur is $7 per $100,000 home value. That's what we're asking for. I just want to make sure that we put that on the record so it's clear what would happen over the 20 years. And we know that this is hard. We said that in our opening statements. And this isn't easy. But this is also something that has unfairly impacted different districts across the state in ways that we just can't sit back and let happen anymore. We have to make this correction.
Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so, members, I come up again. I just wanted to maybe put a finer point on some of what I was trying to highlight before, and I think some of what I've heard. I get having a conversation about what is unfair. The entire state of Colorado, the entire world has just gone through COVID. And I think we've all probably heard from many constituents in our districts talking about loss of wages, loss of employment, struggling to navigate unemployment. And at the same time that these things are going on, they're having to face a reality where they tell their families, they tell their children, we're not going to be able to continue to do swim. We're not going to be able to continue to do dance. We're not going to be able to continue to do whatever the extracurricular activity, soccer or whatever, because there is a cost, a financial cost associated with doing any of those. And so that's a burden that many of our families across Colorado face. And so on that premise, we bring forward something to take away a tax credit that was implemented last year through 1418. And yet we have very clearly in Tabor where it says that starting November 4th, 1992, districts must have voter approval in advance for any new tax rate increases, or mill levy above that for the prior year. So while I understand that there is arguments, judicial arguments, case law, and whatnot that says that perhaps that's appropriate to correct an error, the average family that's going to be assessed on their taxes, they're not going to notice that, but what they will notice is the amount of money that they're putting out of their pocket. That's not fair. So before we start talking about there's unfairness between funding and all of these other things, I think it's important that we highlight the pandemic that we just went through, the implications that that has brought on families, and then to sit back and say, we know you went through all of that, but we're going to ask more of you when you already can't pay for swim, when you already can't pay for dance or soccer. That's unfair. And regardless of what courts say, regardless of what we say in this body, the person writing the check, realizing that that money is going in a direction that is not necessarily for those extracurricular activities because of an error, I don't think that's going to connect. And so if we're going to talk about unfairness, I think we need to talk about the entirety of what is unfair, because as I see it, 1164 and 1418, in light of this pandemic, are unfair to Colorado families.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, esteemed colleagues. I rise to thank the bill sponsors for trying to tackle such a complicated issue. I will tell you, most of us junior freshmen or redshirt freshman legislators, I would imagine it takes at least 2 terms to get your head around this issue, if it even takes that, maybe 3 or 4. This is Chinese math. This is tough. So I commend the bill sponsors for bringing this forward and trying to solve the complicated issues that have been made by our predecessors that make different districts, depending on how they bet back in the day, to debruce or not debruce, depending on that bet they made, what their liability would be with respect to school funding. Last year, Jim Wilson, Representative Jim Wilson, a champion for education, hosted several seminars trying to educate us junior legislators on school funding and the BS factor and the mill levy rates. And as I sat there getting a headache, I realized that in House District 64, I have both extremes. I have maximum state reimbursement in some districts, and I have very little in others. Now, I would say that nobody wants to be degarnetted. I'm not sure what that is, but it's an interesting verb, and I thought that was added a little levity to the day, and I appreciate some levity in these difficult times. But when my colleague to my right here talks about unfair, and this is where I'm going to get to my point, so I want to try to grasp your attention for just a minute if I can. I would argue the rural-urban divide is unfair. Now, I'm not complaining up here pleading. I want to point out something very important to this esteemed body so they understand my rural perspective. You see, the difference in urban versus rural, and I'm no mathematician or statistician, but in an urban center you have a lot of homes. And there's an enormous amount of assessment on a lot of homes, many of them very nice with very high valuation. You go to Holly, Colorado, Eads, Colorado, Campo, Colorado, Plattner, Colorado, Otis, Colorado, which is just a scratch of my communities. There are not very many homes. In fact, some of the homes are abandoned and need to be rebuilt because they're not even safe to live in. And that's a whole other issue. Where the impact is on the land, in the country. Now, I'm a cattle rancher and a farmer. We have land holdings. And we do exactly what the proclamation the governor made. We do exactly that to the best of our ability, as my people do. So the impact, and oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there's not a lot of commercial property out there. There's some, but not a lot. So the landowners in the country bear this burden. Farmers, ranchers. Now, I'm not going to get in the weeds on property tax and valuation. I think most of us understand that. But I will tell you, if you don't empower rural Colorado, if you don't help my people, if you don't help us grow, so our local share can be higher, which we all welcome, because we like to carry our own pail of water, then we have a problem. And we request the state's backfill to help us, as some of my most impoverished school districts do. So in everything we do, as we discuss what we do, I need you to help me build up my rural counties and my rural school districts. I need you to promote the things that make us successful. It is unfair when rural Colorado is constantly under economic attack by my urban friends, activists, or others. Now, I don't want to get into that, but here's what I want to say. What gives value to rural Colorado? Livestock, farming, crops, agribusiness that supports raising livestock and crops and bringing commodities to market. Bringing those things to the city, which is our largest market. But you can't beat us down and then ask us not to ask for state backfill. Ag production is everything in the rural parts of this state, in my district. Everything. And I plead every day before you to not harm us, hurt us, beat us down. That's the fairness issue that I bring up. Help me build our rural economies. Help me raise our property taxes and valuations on the land, on the farms, in the towns, in the homes in our farms, on our, of course, commercial properties fixed. But let us build more commercial properties to support agribusiness. Now, there's an idea. Help us grow instead of shrink and shrivel and die on the vine. You see, the unintended consequences of what we do in this building are so impactful to my people. And I only ask for your consideration and conscious thought when you do what you do to not hurt us. We want our rural community to stay strong and vibrant. We want to pay 27% mill, I believe. We want every community in rural Colorado to stand up and pay their share to the highest extent possible, just like these very wealthy urban districts do. We welcome that. We are great supporters of our schools and our communities in rural Colorado. In fact, Friday night lights is everything to us where I come from. A basketball game in the winter is everything on a Friday night where I come from. And your school is the epicenter of your community behind your church. Make no mistake about it. This is a way forward. We have to put the boat in the water and chart that way in this state. It doesn't matter which side you're on Bruce, DeBruce. Doesn't matter which side you're on Tabor. And I know where my people are on Tabor, believe me. But we have to move forward. And our bill sponsors are navigating that difficult water with this. I only ask one thing when I step away from the well. Let us pay the highest level for our local share permitted by statute. But to do that, every day, ladies and gentlemen, do everything you can to build up my rural communities so we can do that. Do everything you can. And remember, there are unintended consequences for our actions. So make sure you have that consideration with oil and gas, with livestock animal production, and with every other thing you want to put in your crosshairs as we move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention.
Representative Kipp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As many of you probably know, because I keep saying it, before I joined the state legislature, I served on my local school board for 7 years. While I was on my local school board, and a little bit before that, I started to learn about school finance, and it is complicated. School finance, there is just no getting around the fact that what we have done to ourselves in Colorado is we have created something that is a Gordian knot. And we are gradually attempting to undo that knot. And this is a step in that direction. I will tell you that many years ago, that local districts paid about 2/3 of the local share towards their per pupil, what we pay for every student. Today, that is 1/3, and we are backfilling 2/3. The communities that are now paying less did not consciously make that choice. That was an unintended consequence of tax policy that ended up in our Constitution. Sometimes, even in this legislature, we often pass laws that have unintended consequences. The voters put stuff into our Constitution that have had unintended consequences. We now have some of the wealthiest communities in our state who have been ratcheted down and are paying a pittance, not even close to what they really should be paying to be equitable. They could, without going to the 27 mills, they could fully fund their per pupil share and allow us to have more money for all of the other kids in the state. My district is one of those districts that pays the 27 mills and has been subsidizing children throughout the state because we pay our full share. The numbers have come down over time, and as I said, this was not a vote, this was not anything except for an interpretation of the law that the Colorado Supreme Court has already said is incorrect. So what we want to do is gradually say, you know what? We need to correct this mistake that we made so that we can fund education better in our state. Because the one thing I have heard, I think every single member in this chamber say, is we want to fund public education better. This is not a total answer. This is a part of an answer. It is a piece, and it is a step in that direction. I know the representative from Jefferson County is worried that, well, this isn't going to make everybody fair. No, it's not going to make everybody fair because we have created, through putting tax policy with unintended consequences into our Constitution, we have created a problem that we cannot totally fix. But we can take a step in the direction of making things more equitable throughout the state. And that is what this bill is doing today. I think another thing that I heard said was that, well, the representative from El Paso talked about, new taxes. Well, these aren't new taxes. These are setting things back to what they were prior to a wrong interpretation, according to the Supreme Court, which is part of those many people, right? So the Supreme Court and many other smart people say that this was not supposed to have happened. So we're just going to set it back, and we're going to do it at a very slow rate. This is a great bill. I am really happy to support it. I am thrilled that the sponsors are bringing it. I really hope that you will support this, because what you are supporting when you support this bill is a step towards better funding for our public schools here in Colorado. Thank you for your time.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I am going to rise in opposition to this bill. One of the things that I do agree with one of the sponsors on, and all of you in here, or maybe most of you are property owners, and maybe people listening are property owners. You should be concerned, and you should remember this day. Your home could very well be the new cash cow for spending. I know that they say that, the money will go to education, but how many times have we had a ballot question where those funds were going to go to education, and how many times have we passed legislation where those funds were going to go to education, and you can't tie the hands of one legislative body to another. So I'm a little bit skeptical of that. Now, I'm a former county treasurer, and when people would call about their tax bills, and they would start calling as soon as they got them, and a lot of times I answered the phone, and they don't get into all of the very detail that we're talking about here today. They're just very upset that that went up, and they don't know how that happened. So I really wish we weren't doing this. Of course, I come from a family of educators, but this doesn't seem right. And I know that, you're trying to correct an error, but this is not the way to do this. So I'm asking for a no.
Further discussion on House Bill 1164, Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, while I appreciate the amendment that was brought, I want to say that we keep hearing about errors and mistakes. Some of the mistakes are being called things that happened after school districts debruced, that they were mistaken and and invalid, and property owners then should be forced to incur the collection of back taxes due. When a district debruces, it typically waives revenue and spending caps. And then when property values go up and there are more properties, a school district might have a year-to-year revenue increase beyond what the Taxpayer Bill of Rights allows. And then when debrucing, the taxpayers tell the school district that it can keep the excess revenue. The point that I'm trying to make here is that school districts for many, many years, as funding has been trying to be addressed in the state of Colorado, school districts have been addressing mill levy issues in good faith. School districts have been having elections, holding local elections, and there are many times that taxes have been raised in order to do address specific school issues within a specific school district. And Madam Chair, I will be talking about House Bill 1418 just a tiny bit. House Bill 1418, the bill that was passed last year, that this bill 1164 professes to address the errors that might have been made there. 1418 should have taken a needle and thread to fix some of the inequities that we have heard about, and instead it used a sledgehammer. Those are words that we used last year when we were struggling with forcing local school districts to hold elections in a state that is supposed to be held, that control is supposed to happen at the local level. The big government, the power of big state government came in and forced local school districts to hold elections that they may or may not have been ready to, that they may or may not have been able to pass. Many school districts hold elections every couple of years and they fail. And we came in and basically said we're going to punish these local school districts if they don't hit the mill levy, the total funding percentage that we say they should. Now, I understand that the Taxpayer Bill of Rights has impeded school districts and us from raising taxes. I celebrate that. I think that taxpayers, people that own property, should be able to project and look forward and make plans with how much they're going to pay at any given year. And one thing that I do want to say about House Bill 1418, that it was completely passed by one political party. When I checked, we heard about other members of the other members that were working together in a bipartisan way on the school finance interim committee. When it came down to this bill last year, it was completely passed by one party. And I think that should give us all some red flags as far as who was able to have input into this bill. I want to make sure that you all know that because the school districts have already been trying to address the inequities, that coming in with the sledgehammer really caused some issues. I know it did with my school district, and I know it has with other school districts around the state. The reason that the rural schools came in with this current bill is because they're desperately trying to slow down the negative impacts that they got last year when House Bill 1418 passed. With that, I'm just wanting to make sure you all understand what you're doing and what we have done as a body to the local school districts and to the local schools. Yes, having well-funded schools, a well-funded school system, and we want kids to be educated. And yes, it is part of our Constitution that we have public schools that are well-funded. And Amendment 23 was supposed to address that many years ago. For those of you that lived here back in the early 2000s when Amendment 23 passed, that requires the funding to go up, a certain percentage. There's a formula that forces increases every year, and that was supposed to fix the funding issues in public education. And apparently now we're coming back and raising more taxes. You know, if we see inequities, I'd almost rather see us lower taxes for some people to create or find that sweet spot of equity than start raising taxes of the people that we consider to be treated unfairly in the fact that they might not be keeping up. Instead, how about if we save money for the people that we think are paying too much, as opposed to jumping around and saying that some people are paying too little. With that being said, Amendment 23 would still have increases happening every year. And if we treat the local share and find that local share by letting property taxes increase on an organic level, either by property values going up or by local districts making their votes the way they see fit, I think we'd have a much better system here in Colorado. With that, as much as I would like to give tax credits anytime they're offered, when we're trying to fix a problem that was created by a single party less than a year ago, I'm going to urge a no vote on House Bill 1164. And Madam Chair, I thank you for the time.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1164? Seeing none, the question before us is passage of House Bill 1164 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1164 passes as amended. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1123.
House Bill 1123 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Larson, also Senators Fields and Smallwood, concerning a CAPS check for substantiated cases of mistreatment of an at-risk adult.
To the bill. To the bill. Representative Michelson, Janae from the wall.
Representative Larson first, I think.
Sorry. Oh, and actually, we are to the committee report. Apologies. Representative Larson, if you would like to move the bill, and then we'll get to the committee report.
Committee report is down. Oh, sorry. Yep. My apologies. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1123.
And the committee report.
And the committee report.
Thank you. All right. To the committee report. Representative Michelson, Janae.
Thank you, Representative Caraveo, Madam Chair. The committee report was about an amendment that was brought to us by the Colorado Bar Association, in which there were three concerns. One was whether or not we are considering intent when we are looking at the injuries that are caused to an adult in the protective services. Two is whether we are acting quickly in a time of an emergency. And three is whether there is a process for appeals. I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of the Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is passed. To the bill, Representative Larson.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, members, this bill was brought to the Legislative Audit Committee. There was an audit performed, and they found several deficiencies in our Colorado Adult Protective Services data system. The CAPS system is the common acronym. And essentially, during the course of the audit, they found that oftentimes there was difficulty getting information that was reported on cases, making sure that information was available and was able to get to the Department of Regulatory Services. So we actually have a excellent legislative description here in the bill summary. I encourage everyone to read that because it does lay out exactly what the bill does. But essentially, it's making it a little bit easier for DORA to get access to this information to ensure that if somebody has been found within a CAP system to have abused an adult, an at-risk adult, makes it easier for the Department of Regulatory Affairs to get a hold of that information. It's very detailed in here. I'm happy to read the entire summary, but I encourage you all to get into the details. And with that, I ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1123? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of House Bill 1123. All those in favor, please say aye.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1123 passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1130.
House Bill 1130 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Bradfield concerning expanding the Community Transition Specialist Program.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of this assembly, I introduce to you House Bill 211130, the title concerning the expanding the Community Transition Specialist Program.
Would you like to move the bill, Representative?
Yes, I would like to move this bill, please.
House Bill 1130 has been properly moved. Please proceed.
There is no committee report.
Yes to the bill.
Okay.
Representative Michelson, Janae.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an extraordinary bill that seems quite simple, but opens up the possibility for expanded care to people who really need it. So this bill will enable us to serve areas of the state where we're currently not seeing any referrals to what's known as the Transition Specialist Program. For example, the Crisis Stabilization Unit in Montrose would be able to refer patients to the Transition Specialist Program. An individual at the facility on a 72-hour hold who is ready to be released would now be able to receive ongoing support in their community through this Transition Specialist Program. The program would help this person find housing, food assistance, and transportation, supports that are critical to this individual's well-being and their ability to successfully receive behavioral health treatment in their community instead of in an inpatient setting. Meeting this individual's basic needs in the community also dramatically reduces the likelihood that they will be readmitted to inpatient behavioral health care. And in a few months, this person is thriving and no longer needs the Transition Specialist Program. In fiscal year 1920, we received no referrals from Montrose County for the Transition Specialist Program, but we know the need exists there and across the state. Housing resources are crucial for many clients on the Western Slope who will now have greater access to this program through this bill. By expanding the types of facilities that can refer to this program, we are ensuring the program has statewide reach, especially in the communities we care so deeply about in rural Colorado, and it needs more to help more Coloradans recover in their communities. The program began operations in April 2019 and was underspent by $1.4 million in fiscal year 20, and subsequently experienced a $1 million budget cut this fiscal year. The program is currently underspending by $60,000 to $100,000 per month, meaning we could serve anywhere from 62 to 103 additional people annually and more if the costs per client trend down post-COVID. We care about rural Colorado and all of Colorado, and therefore we are expanding this Transition Specialist Program. I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on House Bill 1130? Seeing none, the question before us is passage of House Bill 1130. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1130 is passed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come to order. Mr. Gregorio, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has under consideration the following attached bills, means the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1076 as amended, 1097 as amended, 1123 as amended, 1130, 1164 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Caraveo.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole.
There are no amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Okay, remote participation, hang tight with me. Representative Benavides, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Benavides votes yes. Representative Titone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Titone votes yes. Representative McCormick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McCormick votes yes. Representative Cutter, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Cutter votes yes. Representative Michelson-Janae, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson-Janae votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Soper votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Valdez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Valdez votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Arndt, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Arndt votes yes. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Will, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Will votes no. Representative Exum, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Exum votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sandridge votes no. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote? Representative Ricks is excused. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Please close the machine. With 40 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 2 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. That brings us back to announcements and introductions, I believe, Madam Majority Leader. Announcements and introductions. It is Friday. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, thank you. Well, it is Friday, and I said this Monday, but it's still true today. It will be true every day and always that you all are amazing and loved, valued, and adored. And I do hope that you have a very safe drive home, no accidents or other issues, because I can't wait to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Luck. Representative Ortiz.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just want to call attention to the fact and announce that our governor called up the Colorado National Guard to watch over us over this stormy weekend. And I just want to recognize the work that those men and women in uniform have done for us, whether they are deploying to combat zones alongside active duty, whether it's staffing COVID-19 testing sites, expanding hospital capacity. Really, they are one of the glues that make this country work and that shore up vulnerabilities when we're faced with detrimental weather, wildfires, or this pandemic. So just want to call attention to that and thank them for everything they do.
Thank you, Representative Ortiz. Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You'd think that we coordinated this. Folks, we're going to be driving on snowy roads. And last year, you passed a bill that said move over or slow down. Please, 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 take care, slow down, give people distance, and if you see lights ahead, whether it is a snowplow, a tow truck, or an officer, or anybody on the side of the road, slow down and move over. This is when we need to be our most alert. This is actually what takes care of the men and women who serve us so well.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I just wanted to call out
a generous act of kindness, Representative Luck left me a lovely note and a chocolate with a very kind bit of words on the back. And I really just wanted to make a point of this. I think small gestures of kindness and goodwill are so important. It's really the glue, I think, that holds us together, even though we might disagree and have very vigorous, lively debates on things. At the end of the day, we're all Coloradans, and we can appreciate one another and still be friends at the end of the day. So thank you, Representative Luck. I appreciate this very much, and hope you all have a wonderful weekend and be safe.
Thank you, Representative Byrd. And to the body, it's been a long week. There's long debate on Monday, which sometimes raises tensions by Friday. I just wanted to reflect on the debate that we just had on House Bill 1164 and just compliment both sides for being able to talk and disagree on a very complicated policy issue while at the same time not raising the temperature to a point that doesn't match the decorum of the institution. With that, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to welcome a school group that's here today that you can't see. You don't have to turn around and look. Today is an asynchronous learning day in Adams 12 five-star schools, and so my daughter Ellie and Senator Winter's daughter Sienna are doing their asynchronous school together in the Capitol today. They're not here. They're in a different place. I wanted to welcome them, but mostly I also wanted to just point out we should always keep in mind the challenges parents are facing around this time. Like we're parenting in the building today. There are a lot of folks who have to parent at work right now, and they have to work at home right now. And just to sort of keep that in mind as we move forward. We are almost done with this, we hope, but there are a lot of challenges ahead. And when you hear from your constituents about the challenges that are being faced, that's me, that are being faced right now, like, they are real. So first off, I want to say thanks to you all for being great coworkers that we can pull something like that off here in this building today. But also, when you get the emails and the calls from your constituents about frustrations, they are very real right now. And please support your local school districts. Please support your local parents who are getting us through the end of this pandemic together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Representative Carver.
Colleagues, we know it's been a long week, but I wanted to take this opportunity because I had the best email yesterday. In my community, Lindsay, Fred, Clem, others who have their parents, aging parents in nursing homes and senior living centers who have been unable to visit. And especially Lindsay, whose dad is 100 years old. And when they were able to visit, they had to stay 6 feet apart. You know, he's hard of hearing. And it was just anguish. Of all the constituent cases that I've worked, these are the most difficult and just really suffering by our seniors and their families. And I wanted to call out Teresa Bosma from El Paso County and our wonderful Jody Barker, who had written numerous letters trying to get compassion care visitation expanded, especially when family members and their parent have been vaccinated. Well, I got an email from Lindsay yesterday saying that the visitation guidance had been modified. They had gotten word that they could go in, be with their dad in his room, be close to him. And she said, we did, we hugged, we cried, thank you, thank you. So we're making progress.
Thank you, Representative Carver, for sharing that. Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to announce that AG will meet on Monday if we're indeed meeting, and we'll hear 3 bills, 1046, 1148, and Senate Bill 79. Pay attention to 1046. There'll be a strike blow amendment sent out this weekend. So if you'd like to be prepared for committee, please read that. It's short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Representative Arndt. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the second reading calendar to Monday, March 15th.
Monday, March, what day?
15th?
Yes. See no objection. The second reading calendar will be laid over until Monday, March 15th. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, please travel safely home. Stay safe throughout the weekend. Pay attention to your normal caucus lines of communication. I will attempt to make the call on Monday's snow day or not, late start, snow day, what have you, hopefully before Sunday evening, so you can make your plans accordingly. Again, I just want to emphasize and remind you, if for some reason we are here Monday and you do not feel safe traveling in, we do have the remote participation available. Please fill out the form and get that request in so we know who's here, who's not, and we can just make sure that everybody is safe. So pay attention to those threads. We will get you that information later Sunday, and we'll have those conversations. And with that, I move that the House stand in.
Let's just make sure there's no more announcements and
No more
introductions.
announcements.
Everyone's good? Okay, great. Go ahead, Madam Majority Leader.
Recess?
Yeah.
I move that the House stands in recess until later today.
Yep. Thanks so much. The motion before us is the House stand in recess until later today. See no objection. The House will stand in recess till later today.